Good evening. This is Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. Tonight, as Yakub Memon is hanged for his role in the 1993 Mumbai blasts, the death penalty debate reopens, exposing sharply divided views. Is the death penalty really a deterrent to crime, and does it have any place in the 21st century? Or is the principle of rarest of rare the right way to go? Well, this morning, shortly before 7 a.m., Yakub Memon was hanged at the Nagpur Central Jail after a night of dramatic developments where a battery of lawyers and activists knocked on the doors of the Supreme Court and the Chief Justice one last time. The court actually held an unprecedented 3 a.m. hearing for nearly 2 hours before rejecting the plea at 5 o'clock in the morning. The court certainly showed that its doors were open even at the last minute to those accused of heinous crimes like Yakub, who had exhausted every legal remedy. The execution of Memon, though, has stirred a huge debate over the last few weeks over the death penalty and whether it's time for India to finally rethink or at least begin to talk about a rethink. Well, joining us tonight, we have Pinky Anand, the Additional Solicitor General, joining us from Delhi. Also with us, Mihira Sood, human rights lawyer and anti-death penalty activist, who was part of those protests that took place at Jantar Mantar last evening. Also, she was among the lawyers who had gone to the Chief Justice's house asking for that last-minute hearing. Author and activist Harsh Mandar joins us tonight. Shobha Dey joins us from Mumbai. And Praveen Swami, the Strategic Affairs Editor of the Indian Express, also with us this evening. Shobha Dey, let me ask you first, as a citizen of Mumbai today, tell me, now that this hanging has happened, do you really believe that people feel that justice has been served and that there is closure for 1993?
You know, it's a very, very complex issue, and all I have to say is that Mumbai has been remarkably calm. And for me, that was a very key component in judging how the city of the very city that was blown up and the people of the city have responded to the judgment. And there have been attempts which are divisive, which are dangerous, and which I feel are really something almost, I'd call it disgusting, by political parties to create some kind of a very nasty environment and cast aspersions on the verdict itself. I mean, it can be obliquely worded, but the point is that they are pointing fingers, and it should be discouraged, because nothing is more important at this point than maintaining a calm and maintaining peace and leaving religion and emotion and dirty politics out of the debate. Whether capital punishment, I'm one of those who's anti-capital punishment. I've said it all along, but today is not the right day to discuss it. It's a dark hour for India, for the world. We are in a mood of introspection. We need sobriety. We need to think about this in a more broad-based way. We have to look forward. We have to look for closure. The closure has not come. This is the question you asked me, and it won't come, because this is just half a closure. So long as Tiger Memon is where he is, so long as Dawood is where he is, the city is, of course, concerned about what about the future. Will there be retribution? Are we going to be, subjected to more strikes? If so, where will those come from? Is everything going to die down with this hanging? No, of course it's not.
I think it's very interesting what you say.
If there is closure, no, there isn't.
No, I think it's very interesting what you say. It's a very nuanced position. As you said, you're against the death penalty in principle, but you don't believe that today is the day, or Yakub's hanging is the day to have that debate on whether or not to have the death penalty. Harsh Mandar, let me take that to you.
It's mischievous.
No.
It's mischievous.
Is it mischievous, Harsh Mandar, or is there no time like the present to have this debate at a time when the country has been, of course, debating his case? Now, he's gone, but does India need to seize the moment now and look ahead about whether we still need the death penalty in this country?
No, I think there is. I think there's no time like now to think about it. Not just Yakub Memon's hanging, but very recent study which showed that 75% of the people who have been awarded the death penalty belong to either Dalit or Muslim communities or tribal communities, and it's extremely poor people, and 90% of them actually never had any kind of legal representation. So I think that the country needs to look at what its humane response is to people who have harmed us in the worst kind of way. even to those people who've harmed us the worst kind of way. Because that is really what a humane, civilized society needs to resolve for itself, as country after country in the world is reflecting on it. And I think, very briefly, recognizing that judgments are made by judges who are ultimately human. They can make mistakes. They can have subjective judgments. They can be affected. They can be biased. And also that the purpose of punishment is to allow a person to redeem himself or herself, not for society to wreak revenge on the person who is being punished. And finally, that there's evidence from all over the world now that all the countries which have withdrawn the death penalty have not seen any kind of spurt in crime as is feared. So it's not the severity of punishment, but as has often been explained,
the certainty
it's the certainty of punishment and the fairness of punishment, which is the real deterrence. And so society, we should not be celebrating that even a man who has caused us so much harm has been hung. I think this is a moment of sober introspection about the kind of society we want to live in.
Pinky Anand, let me take that to you. Does this need to be a moment of sober introspection where we look at, whether we believe justice is served by, by somebody dying? Would justice be any less if this person, for instance, had spent the rest of his life in jail, incarcerated, perhaps without chance of parole, if it came to that? Would people, you think, feel that, justice wasn't served in that case? Why does the taking of a life, you believe, constitute justice to a lot of people?
The way the framework of the whole question and the academic discussion around this entire very, very important debate of death penalty is, it seems to always target about the fact that somebody is taking a life. Now, I don't quite think this is the way I see it. I think there are crimes, and there are very limited crimes in which you have a death sentence in our country. About 7 of them are subject to correction. Terrorism happens to fall in any case into a completely different kind of category which needs to stand alone by itself. Terrorism has another few impacts on society, I think, which are undescribable. More than about 257 people killed, about how many injured. This incident of 1993 blasts is well known, aside from other instances. So you have a shocking impact on society, the security of the nation. You are talking about taking a life or being more humane. What about the situation about a terrorist who is incarcerated and put into jail, and then subsequently there is either some kind of bargaining or some kind of pressure to release him, which has happened in the past with some of the terrorists, which I don't think we have any answer for. The question is, crime and society runs like this. You have a crime, you have to have a punishment. The adequacy of the punishment is something for the courts to decide, and that is the manner in which this, and we in India have a fairly rigid system of due process as far as death sentence is concerned. You have it go through so many filters. In Yakub's case in particular, you can go over the number of instances where he has approached the court, and yesterday's hearing should vindicate. 3:30 to 5 o'clock, you have a hearing in the Supreme Court at night where everything is heard, decided, and a judgment given. What more can you have for due process?
I think that's an important point that you make.
Here you have to deal.
No, that's an important point that you make, that the court did open its doors in the middle of the night and have this unprecedented hearing, and Mihira Sood was there. Mihira, the very fact, as Pinky Anand argues, is that every legal remedy that was available to Yakub, it was exhausted in his case at the very last minute. It was exhausted. The court did hear all of you for nearly 2 hours in the middle of the night. And also the argument, that is made against those who oppose the death penalty is that maybe you guys don't understand if, you haven't lost somebody in a terror attack, in a bomb blast. There are people you talk to today, Mihira, in Mumbai, who've been devastated by family members and friends that they've lost in those blasts. And, we may not understand it. Those who oppose the death penalty may not understand it, but they feel that justice has been served. How do we square this off then, Mihira?
Nidhi, I'd like to respond to that as well as to both Shobha and Pinky. So there are 4 points I'd like to make if you'll give me a couple of minutes. Right?
Go ahead.
The first is Shobha's argument that there's a nasty and divisive attempt to leave religion out, to bring religion into this, and the need of the hour is to stay united, not bring in religious differences, etc. I think that is I disagree with that argument. I think it is naive for the simple reason that religion is a part of it. And that brings me to partly to what Pinky was saying as well. Our very definition of terrorism has a religious tone. There is that it is not a coincidence that we consider bomb blasts terrorism,
I'm
but
sorry,
we do not consider
Mihira,
riots
I did not say
terrorism. It
any
is
such
not
thing.
a coincidence that the same.
Terrorism
One second,
knows-
please let me
needs
finish.
no-
Please let me finish.
needs no
I
religion. I have
allowed
not
you to
said
speak,
so.
right?
Pinky, just let
It
her
is
finish
not
and
a
get your
coincidence
response.
that Rajiv Gandhi's assassins, or it is not a coincidence that Rajiv Gandhi's assassins had their death sentence commuted, in fact, on the same day. Or, Dara Singh had his death sentence commuted. But Yakub Memon, on much less evidence of his direct involvement, did not. So, to say leave religion out is a bit superficial. The second point I'd like to make is that this entire argument of, well, the debate needs to happen in calmer times, not at the last minute. In response to that, let me just say this. Firstly, when a person is dying, a person has 15 hours left to live. I really don't think it behooves anyone to say that they should not move the court or try whatever remedy they have left. Not to mention, if the president has rejected the mercy petition at 10:30 at night, when else is somebody supposed to move the court seeking 14 days? If not at the last minute. Not to mention that, let's be very clear, the abolition movement for death penalty is a consistent movement. It has been continuing for many years. There is a Law Commission report out in a couple of weeks that also records this, that records the efforts of abolitionist groups for over many years. It is just because there aren't cameras on it all the time does not mean that people only wake up at the 11th
But
hour.
Mihira, my
However,
question
social
on
change,
whether
legal
those who
change
oppose the death
demands
penalty
both
understand
consistent-
the
one second,
pain.
Nidhi,
No,
one second.
Yeah,
I'm coming
because
to
I have
that.
to open this up to the rest of the
I'm
panel.
coming to
yeah,
that.
Yeah.
I'm coming to that, Nidhi. 1 second. Right, I understand. But there needs to be both consistent ideological opposition as well as case-by-case opposition. That's just how legal reform works. If it is going to take us 20 years to get death penalty abolition, or 50 years, that doesn't mean we can't seek a de facto moratorium by seeking a stay on individual cases. The magnanimity of the judiciary that has been referred to for opening its doors at 3 a.m., frankly, I think it was what they were required to do to see the justice is done, given that the president rejected the mercy petition at 10:30 at night, and there is a requirement in law that 14 days should be given. And
Okay,
very
so you
critical
don't see
of
it
the
as
judgment,
you
and I
don't see it
think
as a
is at all
magnanimous act.
contemptuous or
You don't see it as a
disrespectful to say that
magnanimous
the
act. You
judgment
believe
was
they were obliged to have opened their doors. That
I
was
see it as
something that
just-
should that was what they should have done. Dushyant Dave is joining us, the head of the Supreme Court Bar Association. Mr. Dave, the point is, and 1 second, Mihira, I must get
to the
Mr.
last
Dave.
point about-
Mihira,
as
I'll
to
just
the
come
last
back to you.
point
I'll
about
just
the
come back to you,
victims.
Mihira. I have to
Yeah.
get to the other panelists. Dushyant Dave, I think one of the points is that in India you have the principle of rarest of rare, but the concern that people who oppose the death penalty have is that principle of rarest of rare, always followed. Even in Yakub Memon's case, you did have judges that had a different point of view. In the end, of course, there was the case went through every possible legal process that it could. But someone talked about the Graham Staines example, and Rabindra Pal, who burnt him alive, was actually, his sentence was commuted to life because the judges felt that there were mitigating circumstances because Graham Staines was involved in conversions, and therefore you have a case like that. The man was burnt alive and burnt to death. So is there a consistency? I mean, look at the Rajiv Gandhi killer's case. You have the Bhullar case. You have the Rajana case. There's so much politics over the death penalty. Is our judiciary consistent on this principle of rarest of rare? And can it be error-free when a life is on the line?
Well, the answer to that is in the negative. The judiciary is never consistent because, the philosophy differs from judge to judge. It all depends what judge really thinks about death penalty, whether he has a very soft approach, whether he has a harsh approach, whether he is a strong believer in human rights, etc., etc. So I quite agree with what Mihira said, that look, there are serious issues about the way these death penalties are being, administered today in the country. But the fact of the matter is that death penalty is not about politics. It's not about Congress versus BJP. It's not about religion A or religion B. it's about the law. Today, death penalty stands on our statute book. It has been upheld by the Supreme Court long ago. And if it is so, then death penalty in cases which demand, imposition of death penalty has to be given. Now, the delayed executions of death penalties is something which is terrible. I quite agree to that. But the fact of the matter is that in Yakub's case, there was really no difference amongst the judges. The trial court gave him full opportunity and the judgment was delivered after a long time. The trial court found very compelling circumstances and evidence to show that he was indeed involved in a conspiracy, and it was enough for the trial court to have concluded therefore that he deserved a death sentence. The appeal was heard by the Supreme Court also equally very patiently, and both the judges unanimously gave the original judgment. The review was dismissed also without any difficulty.
But Justice Kurian
the
did
curative
differ.
was dismissed without any
Justice
difficulty.
Kurian did have a different point of view
No,
just
none
a
of
few
them
days ago.
differed.
No, I mean,
No, that's
That
wrong.
was later.
That,
The-
yes,
the
that's what I'm
difference
talking
came-
about.
first time
the
We did
difference
believe
came-
that the curative
No, just a
petition should
minute,
have been
Nidhi.
heard again.
Let the
Maybe
country
on a
know.
point of technicality.
No,
but we
let
did
the
believe
country.
that.
No, Lidhi, will you please listen? If you don't know, the judges differed only day before yesterday when one judge felt that the curative bench was not properly constituted. Now, I would say with greatest respect to that learned judge who is very widely respected, that his argument that curative bench was not properly constituted was really not a correct argument, because the original judges, Justice Sadasivam and Justice Chauhan, who gave the judgment, were not available. They had retired, and therefore the three senior most judges decided the curative petition. Now, therefore this was really, which was unfortunate. Frankly, this difference amongst the judges should not have occurred. What really worries me is that this difference which has surfaced in open has really raised doubts in minds of lot of friends, particularly amongst the minority community, that some injustice was done to Yakub Memon, which is factually not correct. He got absolute justice from the system. At every stage he got a proper hearing and he was represented properly. The judges considered the evidence in all perspective, and therefore I don't think this is a stage to really debate whether Yakub got proper justice or not. I think he got complete and substantial justice at every stage.
Praveen Swami, where do you stand on that? Did Yakub Memon get complete and substantive justice, and where do you stand on the death penalty debate?
Nidhi, let me put it this way. As a journalist who spent 20 years covering violence and has lost enough friends to terrorism not to have fuzzy views on this matter, I think the taking of life is too serious a matter to be left to judges or lawyers. This is something we as a society need to discuss, and Parliament needs to address. I think we can all agree as sensible human beings that life is not something that ought to be taken casually. That's just a foundational principle of our culture, our republic. There is no evidence whatsoever that the death sentence deters crime. This is not true only of India. The largest meta study in the United States by the National Institutes of Science shows this beyond a shadow of doubt. In India, there is nothing to show that past death sentences such as those of Afzal Guru or even Ajmal Kasab have deterred other people from committing acts of terrorism.
Yeah.
Just the other day in Gurdaspur,
Yeah.
if it hadn't been for one timer, one wire on a bomb left badly, we'd have had 2 bogey loads of people dead. So, death penalty does not deter. Does it make society safe by removing a criminal? Arguably yes, but so does putting someone in prison for life. That also makes society safe, and so on and so on and so on. I can see no good reason for us as a nation with our heritage and our values to have this punishment on our statute books. But as I said, I don't think this is a matter for the courts to decide. This is a matter for us as a people to discuss. And perhaps I disagree with Shobha. I think today is the best day to discuss it, both for people affected by the horrible events of 1993 and by those who are considering what happened this morning, to talk about what human life means to us and what justice means to us. If the only reason we have the death penalty is because it satisfies our urge for vengeance, because it gives us a sense of retribution, fine, it does. But that's something to think about, because justice is not meant to make us feel good. Justice is meant to punish a crime and to make our society safer. And the death penalty just doesn't do that.